What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to Double Coverage. We hope you're still living, loving, and breathing sport. I am Dom with the Great Man Sauce, and we've got another special guest saucy today, Laine Pearce, the founder and creator of 130point.com. Laine, how you going?
Yeah, I'm doing well, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Anytime. Saucy's very excited about this one.
I'm excited. Look, 130point.com, the hobby could not live without it. Let's be honest. It's a vital tool to everyone who comes through this hobby. So excited to see what Laine has to say today.
Definitely. All right, Laine. So tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure.
First and foremost.
Yeah, well, like many good card collectors, I grew up in Tasmania, so good Taswegian. There's a fair few of us floating around in the hobby. So I've moved around Australia a bit. Finally, sort of settled in Melbourne the last sort of 10 years, and about 2015, I had young kids. Wasn't going out and doing as much in the sports, and used to mountain bike ride and a whole bunch of things like that. Thought needed a hobby that's a bit more at home and can do after hours and whatever. And I was a typical early 90s collector. So, the Barkley Jordan era, the mass-produced Fleer and Skybox and Upper Deck cards. So still got folders of them sitting at home that the kids often look at and go, "Dad, what are these?" And pull them out and show them the worthless pieces of cardboard in there. But, they like to have a look too. Sort of dwindled out like most people did around 96. So missed out on a lot of the good stuff that came just after there with, the PMGs and all those sorts of things, the numbered cards that we hadn't seen before. And really didn't sort of do too much over the next sort of 15, 20 years. I did dabble a little bit around, 2003 and 4 when I could get my hands on some of the packs at a local newsagent in Adelaide when I was living there. Surprisingly, I had some Upper Deck packs and things in there, which was surprising to me. But, that was about it for my experience up until 2015. And, when we had Suns finally had something to look forward to with Devin Booker, came into the team, got drafted, and, he was playing well. So, that kind of spurred me on as well to get back into the whole hobby side of things. And, I have to thank Card Trader for it, really. At the time, Facebook groups were kind of there, but small. But Card Trader was still kicking around after decades of doing good work for the hobby in Australia. And I met a bunch of people on there that I then sort of met in the groups as well afterwards. But, Graham, who runs that, was still had a good community running there, was still keeping, fair trades and everything going and making sure people were held accountable, which is good. Ultimately sort of started there and just got back into the hobby, started the Devin Booker collection and then moved on to a few other Phoenix Suns rookies that no longer play anymore. For those who don't know, I'm a big Phoenix Suns fan. So back in the day, my brother was a Jordan guy. I jumped on Barkley because I couldn't possibly be the same as my brother. We have to fight, you always have to compete with your siblings. And my other oldest brother decided to go with the Minnesota Timberwolves. So, Christian Laettner at the time, and he was the one that lost out, I think, out of all of us. But yeah, so that was kind of how I got back into it all. And nowadays, living in Melbourne, I have a full-time job outside of all the card stuff I do. So 130 point and the grading stuff, which is done through our, our more Australian sort of centric side of things, the hobby, which you can sort of see in the background behind me. That's our logo there. That's all our PSA stuff. And that's still, to me, I do that part-time, honestly. It's a huge amount of work, but it's done outside of, normal day job, which, may or may not become a full-time thing soon, but we'll see how things go. So, yeah, family keep me on my toes as well when I'm not doing card stuff.
Flying along. A lot on his plate.
Busy man, pumping out.
We do love it. We do. So, what cards do you collect these days? Is it still Phoenix? You're still dabbling in Phoenix?
Still love my Phoenix Sun stuff. I've got a giant stack of cards sitting next to me here, and I'm not going to take up the whole half an hour by going through them all. But I can show you just a few, just to give people a taste of the sort of stuff. So, it wouldn't be a good collector without a couple of Devin Booker silver prisms. So I got
there you go, 9.5s, if you don't mind.
9.5s. Got them back when they weren't, a couple of $1,000. Devin Booker wise, these are probably my favorite cards of his ever produced. I've managed to get hold of 2 of them. I don't know if you've ever seen these before. They are the black gold sizable signatures with the biggest patches I've ever seen in cards. I've actually owned 3 over the duration, but they're numbered to 25. And quite hard to come by, but a couple of them were busted here in Australia. So I jumped on them straight away. I was willing to, I pretty much, case of didn't care what comps were. I was willing to pay whatever the guy wanted to get it out of his hands. And even one of the guys, I think, took me a year before he'd hand it over. But I wanted it that badly. I jumped on as hard as I could and grabbed it. So, yeah, so a few things like that for Booker. Speaking of Oz Card Trader, picked up these two through that. These guys have a bit of a checkered history on these two. I don't know if you ever saw the stories that came with that, but they were actually not stolen as much, but they were a guy on one of the forums, Daniel Whitehead, bought them from a guy on Oz Card Trader and was duped about $3,000. And 2 years later, some guy popped up in one of our Facebook groups trying to sell them. And I went, I know them because I wanted them at the time. And we actually ended up tracking it down. The guy who owned them gave them to his mate. It was a barber in Queanbeyan in New South Wales, just outside of Canberra, to sell for him on the groups to try and sneak them through. But when I told the guy who was trying to sell them for him what was going on, he actually was really good about it, took him to the cop shop. The cops shipped him up to the original owner, Daniel, and Daniel was kind enough to get them to me. I still, handed over a little bit for him, but ultimately, I think, it was a bit of a crazy scenario with just, 3 years. I think it was 2.5, 3 years nearly from the time it first happened.
Did see that story pass me by on the Facebook page at some point. And it's an interesting one, but it's just brings it back to how the community of the hobby can, help out everyone. It's funny how it all comes around full circle and seemed to work out for the original owner in the end, even though it's sort of probably written off that money. That he lost.
Yep, and look, it just shows too that the hobby in Australia is actually small. So when you have big cards like that floating around in the hobby, that they just don't disappear. And if somebody tries to sell them, they do reappear generally. Like they might turn up at a cash converters or something, but people will find them. So yeah, I found that people in the hobby have been really great. And over the 5 years or so, 5, 6 years I've been back in it, it's been great. Met a huge amount of people through it. A lot of good people getting around. So I find that those little instances like that are here and there, but ultimately I think most people in the hobby are there for the right reasons, which is good. And, one example of that is a good friend of mine over in Kiwi land pulled this out of one of his Noir boxes. So DeAndre Ayton, nice Noir tag auto. It's the only one with the Nike jersey tick. I've seen I think I've seen 4 of the 5 floating around, and all the rest of them got the laundry tags. So obviously Ayton, another guy I'm big on. I've been lucky enough to pick up a couple of Ayton logo mans.
Oh,
so
there you go.
The glare there, but
pulling out the big boys.
Listening on the podcast, on the audio, make sure you jump over and have a look at our YouTube once this drops, because these cards are beautiful.
So we've got the for those listening in, I managed to pick this up in a trade for a Giannis PSA 10 Prism rookie, which I think I did well on. Got the DeAndre Ayton Marvin Bagley flawless dual logo man, both game worn. Only time you can get game worn patches is in the flawless, which is great. A lot of people don't realize that actually. They get into the hobby and they think, great, getting these patches. And this year it's even worse with not even worn by the player. We're going to see that for a little while to come.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think we are. We're going to get we're not going to get patches anymore. We're going to get pieces of their masks literally put into the cards. That's what's going to end up happening with COVID. It's seriously. Yeah, there'll be color blast mask patch. Yep. Who bloody knows what they're going to do? They've got to think of something. So you can spread COVID through the cards. That's the main thing. So, so you created 130 point, which, as Source said at the top of the show, one of the most used tools in the hobby. What was your inspiration behind this?
I guess it's probably less glamorous than you might think. And the whole website actually started probably, my idea came about maybe 6 months after I got back into the hobby and I hit a redemption, right? Everybody loves a good redemption. And I went, how the hell do I know if this has actually been fulfilled? Like, is this redemption actually live? Like, if I go to Panini, redeem it, is the card already available for it to come to me? So I thought, I thought there's got to be someone out there who's got a website that has, the database of all the redemptions there. So I can just search through and say, oh yeah, Panini's done that one. Sure enough, it didn't happen. There wasn't anything out there. And Panini had all their redemption reports on their website. So I thought, hang on, let's, join two things together that I wanted to do. I wanted to learn some coding. Not that I'd, had a passion project before to do it. Basketball cards sort of helped that along. And I had this big list of redemptions that I thought, all right, well, I can make something here. So I built up originally a page that was purely just a redemption search engine, really. And then, I had a chat at the time. This was when Grayson and Cherry Collectibles were over in Dockland. So I, got back in just as they sort of started up their new shop there and was able to go in and pick up my favorite prism at the time, which you could buy for $90 for a box of retail. Who would have thought in 15, 16? I think hobby was like 180. Those were the days. Anyway,
and you picked up Dom 15, 16 hobby box with a Jokic in it, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think I paid $2.15 for it. I bought that off Grayson.
Yep.
Gone are those days.
Oh man. I busted probably best part of a case of Grayson's Prism during that time. It was fantastic. But anyway, yeah, look, it's changed now. But so Grayson was actually the one who said to me, look, honestly, if you're going to try and do that, it's probably not going to be enough to get people in to use the website. And I thought, yeah, you're right. Like, what else can I do? Next step was the checklists. So for a long time there, I was very religious with the checklist uploads and actually getting them up there. And it was quite time consuming. I made it a lot quicker now, but that's sort of something that I do a bit more in the background. The actual eBay sales part came along sort of third in line. That was when after I'd sort of done all that stuff, I got to the point where I was using other websites like at the time, there was a couple of them floating around like Sorts of Card Snoop that others know of. I think they were the main ones. And it just wasn't like, I didn't like how it was presenting data or how I searched for it or had to log in for everything. So I thought, why don't I create something that can't be that hard, and jumped on, got the access through eBay to the data, which is the key thing. You've got to sign up with them and get access. So yeah, did that, got on board, and sort of started slow. The first year I was getting maybe, I don't know, a couple of hundred page views a week. Like all good brands, I guess, you got to start somewhere and you build up. And honestly, over the time, I think what sort of helped is that I've continuously developed or built the back end of it to make sure that I'm always keeping the data coming. Whereas I know a lot of other sites have sort of struggled to maintain that sort of, I guess, integrity of data. They've had issues getting hold of best offer data, or they're not producing, quite in the same sort of format or whatever it might be. And yeah, ultimately that's sort of how it came about. Is I got to the point where it was sort of, getting more and more popular. Best offers were becoming harder to find through eBay's data and all sorts of other things. So ultimately I just, had to do it. I've done a phenomenal amount of coding to keep this thing up and running. The number of hours I've put into it, it's probably a bit embarrassing if I was actually to calculate them. So I just don't think about it. So that's kind of how it came about. And honestly, it was more about giving back to the hobby, because when I got into it, young kids and a lot of people, I think, that get into the hobby, or not a lot of them, but there are a lot of people that have mental health issues. And for me at the time, I was struggling with some mental health issues. So having, this project to work on, and also being able to give back to the hobby, which had helped me sort of get through some of those issues back sort of, about 5 years ago, was just something that I was, felt passionate about and sort of helped drive me along and still does to this day.
That's fantastic. That's great to hear.
That's awesome to hear, mate.
It helped you out. The hobby has helped you tremendously. Yeah. And like you did say, like, the community is great, and it becomes like another family, really, and you can go and you can talk to people, and it's awesome. And that's just fantastic to hear. And on that note, how does it make you feel knowing that 130 point is one of the most used tools in the hobby today?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I'm honestly gracious. I'm humbled by it. When I see the term, the sort of the brand more 130 point pop up in sort of places that I wouldn't have dreamt of, and it's just great. It's great to know that I've been able to give something back to so many people throughout the hobby, and I'm always appreciate when people also have feedback, and sometimes that feedback might be come across as a little bit negative, but I always find if you explain things to them and give them a bit of understanding of what's going on and how things work. I've had very little in the way of sort of negative feedback. It's always been positive, and I like to try and evolve things and make it better and try and improve things constantly with it. So that's just it's great to have that feedback. But also, at the end of the day, I think it's sort of more about a tool for the hobby and not so much something for me anymore. It's sort of grown bigger than that. It's more about, it's owned by everyone. They all use it. They all love it. And I want to keep it that way for them. So, trying to improve things constantly.
I like it. I really do. It's awesome to hear. Like, you're honestly helping out thousands of people a day. To get an actual figure, how many people kind of roughly visit your site daily now compared to the 180 odd a week?
It's kind of gone up a bit. I'm just pulling up my stats page here. So to give you an example, in May 2020, we had across the month, and this was during sort of the start of COVID and the bit of the boom. We had about 700,000 page views in the month. Try and guess.
Recall you used to get 100 to 200 a week.
Yeah, about that.
Is that right?
Yeah. That was in May last year, though. Have a guess what March this year was, which was our biggest month.
Oh, it'd be over
3 million.
wouldn't it?
Yeah, 3 million.
Oh, wow.
Let's
There
go.
you go.
And Saucy was 1 million of them.
No doubt.
That'd be
you
right,
mentioned that
Thomas.
it's the biggest growth for us has been the US, without a doubt. It's
Yeah, definitely.
those
And
guys have jumped on board.
we've always got people. We're always in listening to, well, not listening. Well, yeah, listening and watching breaks over in the States and Pool Wax and Little Pool Man and Rizzo, and sometimes they're like, "Oh, check the comps," and it just dropped 130 point, and it's just like on the stream, and it makes you feel as an Aussie, you're like that. You're proud of that. Like that tool came out of Australia, and well, you're the person that was behind that, and it's fantastic. It really is. So let's get into a few things with, obviously, it might be a bit complicated, but some of the challenges that you face generating like eBay search tools, the search tool for the site, is whether it be naming of product, mislabeling, that type of stuff. eBay themselves potentially.
Yeah, there's a bit of all that in there, isn't there? So, people who have followed along have seen some of the issues that have popped up from time to time. But I guess a bit of a storyline along what's happened over the years is originally eBay were very open with their data. Pretty much anybody who was willing just to throw their details into an application could get basic access to all the data that they have. So for a long time, it was fantastic. The first 2 or 3 years, I just, business as usual, nothing changed. We just carried on. Could grab best offer prices directly from eBay's data streams. You can jump onto their data streams and get a whole bunch of information that they've locked down now. They've really constrained a lot of that data. I've been lucky enough to actually, I have direct contacts with some of the guys at eBay now, and have spoken with them directly and tried to understand the reasons behind it. A lot of it does come down to privacy laws. So one of the reasons why we're seeing in the last few years the data that eBay makes available. So, without getting too technical, there's basically a way you can use your internet and your back end of it to actually request that data from eBay live, like straight direct, as you're on the page, and that's what we do at the moment. So you type your search in, and I'm actually using that data to go and grab that data from eBay's essentially back end search engine. It's called an application interface for anybody who actually knows what it is out there, but ultimately it's kind of like a reach into eBay that we have. We're lucky we're only some of the few people that have that left now. There's not many. They've cut that off. And they're still working on how they're going to move forward with it because of the privacy issues with data. So particularly like European Union laws and all those things that, the cookie bar you get at the bottom of pages all the time. Yeah, it's linked to a lot of that. So ultimately eBay can't just give away some of this sales data without understanding the legal ramifications behind it. So we're still lucky. We've still got access directly with eBay. That's how we can get some of this information, and we maintain that, integrity of the data on the sales page, which is good. And going forward, I'm actually working on improving that significantly. I'm sort of maybe about 50% of the way through of producing a better approach to managing the data and actually making searches quicker, hopefully also more accurate. There's a bit to do still, but ultimately it'll be hopefully a more of a good research tool as well, not just a straight, here's a list of results. You might be able to do more with it. You'll have plots and things like that. And hopefully if we can get that up and running soon, we can also start adding in the ability to create your own account, save your own searches, save your own cards, just sort of building on it a bit more continuously, just to give people more options with that tool that they might want to use. We had to take one away, which was a pricing tool we used to have in there. But I'm trying to bring something like that back, but make it bigger and better again.
I like it. Very, very nice.
See,
now,
little sneak in look at some plans to come down at 130 point. We like
exactly. Yeah. That's what we like. The hobby would be very excited for that. So you also do group subs. Now let's talk a bit of hobby here. Let's talk a bit of hobby. And you do group subs for Source's favorite grading company, which is PSA. So we've got Source. Laine will be all right. Source, you just got to be careful what you say. How have you found? We keep hearing this. All right, there's no more 9s and 10s left. They don't give 9s and 10s anymore. It's finished. Apparently, it's over. So they don't give them anymore. Perfect person to talk to is someone like yourself, because you're seeing these slabs come through a lot. Whether they send them back to you or not in time is a different story. But how have you found the ratio of 9 and 10 grades within the last 12 to 24 months? And you can even say more recently in the last couple of months, if you've got a sub back.
Yeah, look, I think I can generalize it across 12 months, because long story short, it hasn't changed a lot. What has changed is the volume. So if you'd send 10 cards and you're getting 30 to 40% 10s, that's 3 or 4 10s out of your 10 cards. That's kind of, it's been about 30 to 40% over the past 2-3 years since I've been doing this in group subs. That typically is the ratio when you take a bunch of different people submitting who don't always check their cards the same as others. So it's kind of a constant sort of, I guess, population of information and data. If you then expand that out to what we're doing at the moment and seeing across PSA and everyone, we're sending thousands of cards. We used to send hundreds. The first group sub I did was 20 cards. It was me and a friend, right? We did 20 cards, and I think we got, out of 20 cards, I think we had 6 PSA 10s. 2 of them were Ben Simmons-based Prism cards. So it also depends on the type of cards you're sending as well. So the 30 to 40% holds true, and sometimes is higher for ultra modern cards. They're new cards manufactured well. Yes, we know a lot of them have issues with them with print lines and that. When you're talking about Prism being an optic and those sorts of things being a huge number of the cards submitted, they've got common faults, but most people know what they are now and can pick the cards. So you get a pretty high, grade with those cards, and that's the 30 to 40%. You go to a modern, the sort of 2015 to 2005 era cards drop off a bit. 2005 and below, or even 2007, so sort of those Topps era cards. Some of those Topps era cards are horrendously, like the edges, the way they were cut, and some of the condition on them, they don't hold up very well. So really, we bag out Panini, but they have done a pretty good job at manufacturing cards that in general hold up pretty well so far, even some of the early 2010 stuff. You keep going back though, you hit the 90s era and it just goes downhill real quick. So I always tell people with 90s era stuff, if you get a PSA 9, it is the same as a PSA 10, or if not better, from ultra modern cards. Because getting a PSA 9 in modern stuff is really hard. It's just the way they're cut, the way they're centered, the type of stock they're printed on. Even just some of the printing of the cards just doesn't give them much chance of a 10. So you get a 90s era PSA 10, it's a good card. It's a really good card. And they're valuable because the numbers of them are so low. Like, we don't get a lot. We'll send in, say, 200 cards in a sub. And I think we had one sub recently with a whole bunch of 90s in it. We got 2 PSA 10s out of 200. To be fair, there was a lot of cards in there that were really old. We had some even down in the 70s eras and all that were, an 8 or a 7 in them is really good. But yeah, that one was quite low. But when we looked at the cards afterwards, there were reasons why they weren't 10s. All of the cards had reasons why they weren't 10s. And we did check, we had a look, made sure that, we thought we weren't getting graded harshly, and to sort of also give myself some satisfaction that we can distill some of those rumors that people, comment on. They say, they're getting harsher. They're getting 8s and 9s now, not 9s and 10s. We've sent thousands and thousands of cards, and we don't have them all back yet, but we're starting to see them roll in. And, last sub we got back still had 30% 10s. So it's really, I haven't seen a huge change yet. I guess I'll have more, data to go on when we get some more of these big subs coming back through. We're kind of just catching up now to August submissions from last year. Most of them are starting to finish off. Then we'll be heading into October, November submissions coming back. Those were when it really peaked. During those months, it just sort of exploded. We got up to 3,000-4,000 cards a month between then and February. So our February submission and January submissions were over 4,000 each, I think, from memory. So we've got a lot of cards still at PSA to come back.
Yeah,
very nice.
I just like to hearing a different perspective. You get all the people that are quick to say that they're doing these sorts of things in terms of pop control or whatever. But it's good to have multiple perspectives, and then you yourself, who obviously runs the biggest group sub essentially in Australia, or one of the biggest. So it's good to hear the other side of the story, and but yeah, I'm just, and I've never said that there is pop control. I do think that there was a bit of an aspect of howlers getting through in terms of PSA just having some bad ones, but that happens with every company. It's not just exclusive to PSA. Every grading company is the same. I just hope now with their advancements into technology, into that aspect, that will lessen the howler percentage, whether that was like a 10-15%, where maybe there was too many of those sort of getting through, that's down to a lesser percent, 5% sort of variance. And if that's the case, I think that's better for the hobby, that there's a more consistent grade across the board, which it seems to be that it hasn't changed. So which is good for all of the cards that were graded previously, because obviously I don't think PSA would want to do something like that. It would not be a good look if they ended up getting, caught doing something like that, and they'd be flirting with their reputation that they've, worked so hard to build over 20 years that they've been in the industry. It would just be complete, sabotage of their own business.
Yeah. And look, I agree. It's like anything. It's human error comes into play with everything. Analogy I said before, when you're sending 10 cards in and you might get, or even 100 cards in, and 1 out of 100 might, something might be wrong with the grade, or it might not be perfect because human errors there. When you start sending more and more cards in, sometimes those errors can creep in as well. And we've seen, things slabbed incorrectly. We've had, a couple of them come back once that they're actually the labels were back to front on the slabs. They were back-to-back cards, but one was an optic holo, one wasn't, and the labels were the wrong way around. And it just happens. There's human error that comes into play because the whole process has humans in it. And having said that, I don't think you'll ever see the humans disappear from the process. But
no,
some of these technologies that are starting to bring in, I think, are fantastic and can really help speed up the way that more the speed and some of the accuracy as well, and also give a bit of sort of an initial grading perspective on the card very quickly. Because at the moment, even if you guys have ever pulled cards out to look at condition for potentially for grading, it takes time. The human eye can only look at so much at once, and it takes time to go over the card. And the PSA graders have got to do the same thing. They've got to spend 20, 30, 40 a minute on each card, depending on what they're looking at and the reasons why they're trying to figure out what grade for it. So having that sort of AI technology, as long as it's used correctly and checked and balanced, I think it can really help the whole grading process, whether it be PSA or any other grading company.
Definitely. Now, just quickly, based on obviously those poor grades that we're rumored to be hearing, what do you think is a factor for that? Do you think it's lack of care in terms of like the eye test that collectors, they're just like, if I send it to PSA, it's going to get a 9 or a 10. So they're just pulling cards and just sleeving them and subbing them. Do you think that could be the problem? Or people just just really not taking the duty of care at all and just subbing everything that they rip?
Yeah, and look, a lot of people don't quite understand, I think, what is required to check a card for its condition. If you just look at it under normal light in a room, it's not good enough. The key thing is magnification and light. You need a direct light on the card. So you know how if you look at a card under a light, you get glare? You're actually looking at the glare spot to pick up the real intricate details of the card, if there's a little dent in the card, if there's a surface issue. And you got to remember that the grader is looking at the cards under 10 times magnification in most cases. So if they're looking at the corner of the card, you look at it by eye in your hand, you go, yeah, that's pretty good. Under 10 times magnification, that thing can look terrible. You actually start getting into the detail, look along the edges, it starts looking really rough. So having that magnification component coupled with the direct light, I think is where a lot of people might not quite hit the mark. So that could be one of the factors that lead to it being not the grade they want. And honestly, without actually being in the grading room with the grading guys, it's hard to really get that feel for exactly what it is they're looking for most of the time. But in most cases, I find I knock out 90% of cards I want to send for grading, just because I look at it and go, nah, that defect's going to cause it to not get a 10. I start assuming it's a perfect 10. As soon as I see something wrong with it, I start thinking about how much it's going to knock off the card, not the other way around. I don't build it up to a 10 until it's starting there and then knock it down from there. But I get it wrong. I think my last 20 cards I sent, I got 10 back 10s. We're not perfect. I try to get it pretty high. Other times I've had great success. I've got like 18 out of 20 in recent history too. Like I think January's sub, I got about that 18 out of 20 cards with 10s. Wow. And then previous subs, I've kind of had this up and down where I get them right sometimes and other times I don't. So yeah, it's easy to miss things. I guess is one thing I found.
Definitely is. Definitely. Source, definitely you could relate to this because you did a bit of that for us when we sent some cards to CGC for grading, some Pokemon cards. And Source was like, oh, give me about a week and a bit. I've got to sit down and go through these Charizards and I got to go through them like to a T. And he literally top-loaded the ones that were good and he tagged them orange with a tab and then the other ones yellow. And then we sent them off to sub, and we got nothing less than a 9. So it was 9.5, and we got 2 10s out of it.
Yeah, we got a fair few 10s. We did pretty well. Yeah. So I was pretty happy with the overall process. But it's definitely spending the time doing those sorts of things. So yeah, I can see why some people who don't have the time do pay someone to sort of review their card because it can be time consuming, but the way Laine explained it then is the best way to do it, which is, starting it at a 10 and then, seeing the defects and knocking it out straight away because that allows you to get through more cards quicker. Because if you're thinking it the other way, then you're like, oh, it's got this little dent, it's got this, and you think, oh, it might get a 9, I'll send it anyway. But at the end of the day, you better just to aim for 10s and then, send it in. And hey, if it gets a 9 or an 8, so be it. You can't get them all right, but at least you're not spending 10 minutes reviewing one card. I try to keep it like maximum to 2 minutes, 3 minutes maximum. And that's looking at under a magnifying lamp and all that. So which is a must use for anyone out there. Just jump onto Amazon or eBay, you can buy one off there. So definitely you must use.
What's your thoughts, Laine? Latest upgrades at PSA, its effect on the hobby when PSA reopens in July. Do you reckon slabs will become less valuable than a computer graded slab? What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they actually implement it because we still haven't got clarity on exactly how they're going to implement a lot of those, some of those new technologies into the grading process. I think ultimately, as long as the standard sort of stays where it is, they use that system to make those standards maintain. That's the idea. They're not going to try and let them drop. Then I don't think it'll change a huge amount in terms of the grade of a pre versus post. PSA 10, post July. It'll still come down to the market. What does the market want? We've still got a big enough market out there to support the massive influx of PSA cards that is coming. And then it started, the wave has started because we're getting some of those cards back from the middle of COVID last year when really it started to peak. So we're going to see more and more and more and more coming in. As I said, our numbers increased in August, November, sort of around that window. So honestly, I don't think the upgrades will make a huge difference. Ultimately, it'll be more what the market can handle in terms of all the cards coming out. So when they reopen, we're going to see it. I haven't got any clarification yet from them. I had a meeting with them about a week and a half ago. Our dealer rep couldn't actually tell us exactly what was happening yet. He said, look, I'm going to tell you as soon as I know, but ultimately we don't know what's going to open up when. So I guess my gut feel is, though, they'll start just gradually bringing the different levels in. So they'll start with 2,500 again. Then they'll come down to 1,000, then 500. I don't ever know if we're going to get the under 100s back again. Honestly, probably not going to happen for some time if they're going to ever do it again. So I think people should just be prepared to consider the under 500 as the value category as it was before it shut down. And they may even put limits on how many we can all send. I'm not sure. It's still a bit uncertain yet, but they are still pushing towards 1st of July is all I know.
Yeah, well, I was going to say they must be thinking about doing something different because surely they must be thinking about the the amount of cards that people are withholding, whether sending to another grading company or they just prefer to send them to PSA, and realize that, when they do open the doors, if it's just like an open, hey, we're open, send all your cards in, it could quickly get a backlog straight away.
All the Prism cards that'll just appear. Imagine that. Especially LaMelo balls, and they'll just dump with base LaMelos left, right, and center. And so they will. I expect it's going to be a gradual reintroduction, and whether it's limited numbers or not, that's the next step. But I guess we'll know hopefully in a couple of weeks' time. I'm hoping they give us an update.
They've got some sort of idea or plan behind it so that they can combat this, because it's going to be an issue. So I think they don't want to go back to square one. And I hope that I'm sure they've thought about it. It's just see what they do. Let's just see what they do. It'll be interesting to see.
Definitely. What's next for Laine, Pearce, and 130 point?
Well, look, we're looking to continue evolving and expanding. I guess the biggest thing I'm trying to work on at the moment, and I won't name the particular sites at the moment, but we are trying to expand the data sources for sales data. We've got a few things in the pipeline at the moment with a couple of different marketplaces out there, I guess is the best way of putting it. So ultimately, my goal is to have 130 point is not just an eBay sales data place, but a sales data place for everything. So particularly for cards at the moment, who knows later on what it might expand into, but at the moment is really I'm focusing on trying to establish some relationships and agreements with other marketplaces. So I'm in discussion with a few at the moment to actually be able to obtain their sales data as well and show that, and also show cards for sales on their platforms. So ideally, these other marketplaces still exist themselves. We can just provide a central place to come to and go, I want to, Ja Morant, Silver Prism, PSA 10. Punch it in, items for sale. Oh, great, there's eBay. Oh, hang on, it's also on this other platform, this one and this one. Oh, hang on, this guy's got a better listed price than these guys. So it's more than just having that eBay as a central, monopoly. I want to kind of expand it so these other marketplaces get more exposure as well and can actually, help everybody in the hobby to sort of get the best deal or find the best cards they want.
That would be an awesome feature, Laine, because it seems to be a common thing that I hear people saying is there's that many different places where people are selling cards now these days. I didn't even know half the auction houses that existed in America. I thought there was just like Golden and Heritage, and then I find out there's another 5 different ones I'd never heard of. And bringing all those together in one place where you could search them all at once would be unbelievable. I think that would be a winner with people for sure.
And the thing is as well, the eBay is becoming a bit like its stigma is a bit like PSA in the hobby, where before the shutdown, there was all these other grading companies that were coming up, but no one wanted to give them a chance. Since PSA closed their doors, everyone's giving them a chance. So now there's diversity in the slabbing side of cards. Who knows if that changes once PSA opens, but that's to be seen. But it's the same thing when it comes to marketplaces. There's so many out there that are just hobby-centric.
Yep.
And not eBay, where there is obviously cards, but everything else is there as well. You can go buy a bloody kitchen table if you want. But you doing something like that is also, whether it's an auction house or My Slabs, for example, as well, putting out their stuff and what they're selling cards for, and all those prices being in one area, it really is a great idea. And honestly, we wish you all the best of luck with that, because that would be literally a centralized point for the hobby.
Yeah, look, appreciate it. And I'm trying to push it as much as I can and get some momentum. And I hope that if we get a few people on board, then the others will realize that it's in their benefit. And the main aim is not just sold data; it's also what stuff's available for people, so I can go and find what they want, get what they want, and increase their cards and their PC. And
you can go from 3 million a month to 10 million a month.
Now I've got to find a proper way to monetize it, right? So. Apologies to anybody from America out there who got stung with the new ads when they came online. They killed a few people over in America, but we've fixed them now, we think. But there was some us Australians didn't see some of the stuff that happened when I tried to put a few ads on the webpage to actually help fund some of this stuff. I got a few interesting emails from the Americans saying I can't even use your site anymore because of this ad. So yeah, we'll try and find a better way of doing it in the future.
Feel free, if you are listening from the States and you know someone, to avoid any issues with ads potentially getting in your way that are Australian, feel free to sponsor Laine from America. So then you get sponsored ads from the States, and then you have nothing to worry about. You can access the site without any issues. But that's awesome, and it's great to hear. Now, we ask this question all the time, every guest. It's the last question before we tee off the podcast. But is there an underrated card set, type of card in the hobby that isn't getting any love that you want to shed some light on? It's a bit of a play.
Yeah, it's always a tricky one because at the moment I've found that so many cards that I found underrated have all just gone through the roof. That have just exploded, right? So all these cards that I used to think, oh yeah, I started off collecting silver prisms. They've gone through the roof. You used to be able to buy them for $10, $20 each. So I like to try and keep my eye on some of this stuff. I think it's a little bit left field. It's actually not basketball card related.
That's okay.
I myself collect a bit of everything. I'm into, basketball is one of my main passions. I collect a heap of soccer cards. I also dabble a bit in NFL here and there. But the one I'm massively passionate about at the moment, because I love the sport, because I'm an aerospace engineer by trade, is Formula One. I think people, and we saw it when it came out with Topps Dynasty, people slept on it. It was selling at $300-400 US a box. The minute it came out, $1,500 US a box. I was lucky enough to secure a couple of boxes from an Australian retailer and did really well. Hit a Max Verstappen, patch auto to 5, and a Kimi Räikkönen 101 dual patch auto. So, absolutely killed it. Everybody said, good old Lucky Laine. He's hit it again, but they don't see all the boxes that I opened that got nothing in them, like all the Prism EPL this year. Let's not talk about that.
Oh, geez.
So, to me, yeah, you got some too. Good, yeah. But yeah, to me, Formula One, I think, is something that we can see really growing. At the moment, Lewis Hamilton cards are the ones that command most money. The Topps Chrome release that came out recently did pretty well. So I guess just keep an eye on the Formula One front and the cards coming out of that. We've got Dynasty appearing again next year. Yep.
Got the grid Formula One, 1992
there you go,
grid
back in the
box.
day.
That's from 1992.
Oh, they're awesome.
Michael
Yes.
Schumacher.
Yes, perfect. So yeah, keep an eye on that stuff. This year's one is Mick Schumacher, his son's rookie cards coming out. So Topps Chrome, I think he was still in the Formula 2 cars. The Dynasty that's coming out later this year will have him in his actual his Formula 1 gear, and it'll be essentially his rookie cards. So that'll be
So I actually had a look at the checklist, and the Topps Chrome Sapphire, as I like to call it, it's the Montgomery. I call it the Montgomery Burns because you got to definitely have a membership to get it. So apparently in that, it's got Mick Schumacher's card in a Haas uniform with an RC on it.
Yeah. So that's why those sold out quickly and command so much of them. I think it's $650.
Yeah, $650 US. I don't know if you saw that, but it was offered for $99 to members, and then it got released on the thing for $130, and then it got released again on a pre-sale on eBay for about $1,300 US, and then it dropped to $850 US, and then you're telling us it's at $650 now. But there you go. It's still 6.5 times what it released for. So it's just insane. It's great. But F1, I reckon, is definitely a good play, and it's now got so many more eyes on that sport than what it did 12 months ago. It is ridiculous.
A lot of young people, and it was one of the only things that kept going during COVID. They managed to make it work, and it was, still Lewis Hamilton killed everyone, but ultimately it still, provided a bit of sport, bit of entertainment for a lot of people out there, and particularly in Europe, it's huge. So, it's something to keep an eye on. Soccer's already exploded. F1's getting there, so it's coming up.
I love it. Well, you can find 130 Point at 130point.com or on Instagram at 130, so 130_point, POINT_.dot_com. Go check it out. Check out the website if you haven't. You've been living under a rock, as Sauce and I always say. thank you so much. Is there anywhere else we can check you out, Laine, just in case we've missed
You got
anything?
a personal collection page where you show off all those nice Booker cards or something, Laine?
No, I've probably got to start one, to be honest. I keep cramming up 130 point Instagram page with my own PC stuff, so it's about time I probably build my own page and leave that one just for the business. So
There you go.
Yeah.
Call it Lucky Laines. Lucky Laines
maybe.
PC.
That's a good
There
one.
you go. Very
Sounds
nice.
good.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Laine. We do appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Well,
Thank
thanks,
you.
guys, for tuning in, ladies and gents. So keep living, loving, and breathing sports. It's double coverage. It's been Dom with the great man Sauce and Lucky Laine himself. Peace.
Peace out. Thank you for tuning in. Please don't forget to leave a review on the Apple Podcasting app. Also, follow us on socials, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. Talking all sports, double coverage.